The Floor 7 boss fight is one of the most difficult to learn dungeon experiences. That's why in today's video, I'll be showing you exactly how to defeat Necron step by step and showing you some additional tips and tricks along the way. If you enjoyed the video, consider leaving a like and subscribing. I'd really appreciate it and helps the channel out a lot. Also, if you haven't already, head on over to my Discord. We hold tons of giveaways and even have a Hypixel rank upgrade going on right now. So what are you waiting for? Come join. The link is in the description. See you there. The Floor 7 boss fight consists of 4 phases which all have a unique goal. If you're already confused, don't worry, I'll explain them in detail throughout the video. Before we get into the phases, I'd like to mention a very important item that you should equip before going into the boss fight. This item is a rabbit hat, and it will give you a permanent jump boost for effect, which will help you a lot during the 4 phases. Even though this hat is quite drippy, you might want to replace it with a more useful helmet after entering the boss fight, because honestly, I don't think it'll last very long with its additional +5 intelligence. Firstly, I'll start off with phase 1. Once you enter the Floor 7 portal, you'll be greeted with a factory-like arena with 2 energy crystals floating on high ledges. You may also notice the lower platforms. This is where the crystals must be replaced in order to generate power for the beam. The beam is to make Necron vulnerable and able to be damaged if he is led into it. Anyway, the original idea for Floor 7 was that players had to parkour their way up to the top and retrieve the crystals, however that has changed completely. Alternate ways were found, such as using a Jerry Shingun to climb the wall and grab the crystal, or using the boost of the lava paired with the Bonzo Staff's knockback to bounce onto the platform to get the crystal. There are so many ways of doing it, but your main aim is to get the crystals down to the destination before the Wither Miners and guards spawn. I personally use the Bonzo Staff method as the Jerry Shingun can be quite laggy on high ping. It also eats away your mana like crazy, whereas the Bonzo Staff does not. Once a Wither skeleton spawn, the crystals will be able to be placed, and if done correctly, the beam will be powered red. Try to lure Necron into the beam. Generally tanks do this, but if you don't have a tank on your team, the mages do it. For tanks, try and stand behind the beam and throw the Axe of the Shredded at Necron, or the Wither skeletons. He will then target you and he will be stunned by the beam. For mages, they use their left click on Necron or the Wither skeletons as their melee attacks become ranged. This is due to their mage staff ability. Now that you've led Necron into the beam, his shield will become deactivated and he will become vulnerable to damage. Necron has 1 billion health, but you'll only need to deal 250 million damage in phase 1, before he moves you on to phase 2. If you don't deal enough damage in the time Necron is vulnerable, the crystals will go respawn back on the high ledges and you'll have to repeat the process. Keep in mind that every time Necron loses his shield, he gets stronger. In phase 1, he'll have 100 defense. In phase 2, he'll have 200. During phase 3, he doesn't lose his shield, so there's not a defense increase. And in phase 4, he'll be the strongest with 300 defense. Now on to phase 2. As you're flying down into phase 2, it might look scary as there's tons of Wither skeletons, but don't worry, if done right, you'll be completely fine. Usually this is when you decide whether your team wants to pre-fire or not. What is pre-firing, you might ask? Well, it's when a player with Wither Impact on their Necron's blade spams right click to kill the Withermancers and Wither guards before you touch the ground. You'll know if your team agrees to pre-fire if they say the acronym PF meaning pre-fire or NPF meaning no pre-fire in chat while flying down. If you don't have a tank, I'd suggest not pre-firing as you'll take a lot of damage and most likely die. This is because of the flying skulls which are released from killing Wither Miners and Necron's apostles which explode dealing damage on impact. Don't be that person who pre-fires when someone says not to. It's a real pain and you'll probably die yourself, which will be instant karma. If you do have a tank however, pre-fire where possible. Due to their diversion ability, tanks will take 80% of the damage you receive and divert it to themselves. That is, as long as you're in their 30 block radius. Tanks should also use their ultimate ability, Castle of Stone, as they'll receive 70% less damage for the next 20 seconds. After you've killed or run away from the mobs, you want to go to the Purple Crusher because it's right next to the entrance of phase 3, which is under the Red Crusher. On every corner of the arena, you'll notice there are these things called pads which control the closest crusher. The crushers are used to crush Necron and make him vulnerable for 10 seconds. During this 10 seconds, you want to try and deal enough DPS to get Necron on half health, which is another 250 million damage, but he has a total of 200 defense this time. Do you remember how I told you that the Rabbit Hat's jump boost would be super helpful in phase 2? Well, here's the reason why. Instead of waiting for the whole crusher to go to its max height and all the way back down, lift the crusher up just a tiny bit. The game thinks that the crusher stopped moving and therefore hit the ground. Next, get Necron's aggro and use the Rabbit Hat's jump boost to lure Necron into the crusher. You'll be able to jump high enough just to let Necron's head hit the pillar. Again, this will make Necron vulnerable for 10 seconds, allowing you to damage him. If you forgot to get the Rabbit Hat's jump boost before you went into the boss fight, that's fine, just use a Jerry Shin Gun or Bonzo Staff to boost yourself up into the Crusher while having Necron's aggro. Keep in mind that the Crusher doesn't always have the ability to crush Necron, it only lasts for a small amount of time after the Crusher has stopped moving. If you aren't successful with dealing enough damage, Necron will become enraged and goes into a frenzy where he deals extremely high amounts of damage with explosions. He'll start randomly chasing players that are close to him, so be careful. Eventually, he calms down and you're able to repeat the process with the remaining Crushers until Necron is at or below 50% health. On the other hand, if you're successful, Necron will fly up above the arena and shoot lasers, breaking the already broken Crusher on the red corner. This will then reveal the entrance to Phase 3, also known as the Terminal Phase. Usually at this stage, players recall the group of terminals they plan to complete in Phase 3. This doesn't always happen, but it's a good way to refresh your memory so there aren't any mistakes. If you have no clue what terminal groups or even terminals are, don't worry, I'll explain them in a bit. Finally, jump down into the hole Necron created under the red Crusher. Watch out for Necron's focus laser because it can deal huge amounts of knockback and stop you from entering Phase 3. If this happens to you, you use a Spirit Leap to teleport to any desired player of your team that has already jumped down the hole. Oh, and just some side notes, usually the Archer shoots the Wither Skeletons on the red pad before dropping into the hole, as this removes most of the Wither Skulls that usually chase you and explode while doing terminals. Also, watch out for the bug chunk on the red pad because if Necron gets lured there, he'll be stuck forever and the run will be thrown. Luckily, you won't ever need to go to the red pad because the red Crusher is intentionally broken from the start. Now on to Phase 3. If you made it this far into the boss fight, congrats, you're about halfway there. Phase 3 consists of 4 sections, each separated by 3 gates. Necron will follow you at a steady pace while you and your team attempt to complete the terminals to open the gates. Terminals are essentially puzzles which require you to click on specific blocks to complete. Some terminals will require you to turn the glass from red to green, whereas others require you to pick items that start with a letter. You can speed terminals up a ton by getting mods like SkyTills or Skyblock Extras which reveal the blocks you have to click on to activate the terminals. In every section, there is a device which a player must complete. On section 1, the device is called Simon Says, also abbreviated as SS. After starting it, you must click the buttons in order of how the sea lanterns are placed. To cheese SS, jitter or drag click the first button that appears. If done right with high enough CPS or clicks per second, this will almost instantly complete the device. If you can't jitter or drag click fast enough, there are mods like SkyTills which can help you do it the normal way. Once you've completed the terminals and the device, 2 levers will need to be activated before the gate can be opened. The gate will then open in 5 seconds, or if it is destroyed by an explosion, such as the Mage's Guided Sheep ability or the Archer's Explosive Shot. Super Boom TNT can also be used to destroy the gate. You're also able to slow Necron down by shooting him with a bow like an artisanal shortbow or using the Mage's left click ability. There's many other ways. Terminal groups are generally called at the start of a run, and often before you drop into Phase 3 to refresh your memory. To do multiple sections at once, you'll need to climb or glitch through the gates. To glitch through, try and get over 350 speed. This can be helped with a Rogue Sword, Black Cat, or Young Dragon Armor set. Next, use a Stonk and break through the bottom of the gate until you phase through. Another method is by climbing up the side of the gate using a Jerry Shin Gun, but this uses a lot of mana and is bad for high ping players. For terminal groups, S1 stands for Solo 1. This means that you'll need to do every terminal in section 1, including Simon Says. If a player just says 1 or 1 no SS, this means that they aren't able to do Simon Says and that 2B or 2T must help them out and complete it. 2B stands for 2 bottom, which means they'll need to complete the 3 terminals on the bottom of section 2. 2T is 2B's opposite and stands for 2 top. This means you're required to do the 2 terminals on the top of section 2, as well as the device. Some parties don't do this, but the players that complete 2 must activate at least the left lever at 1 on their way to section 2. They usually also destroy the gate with Super Boom or their abilities. This takes the stress of the player completing section 1 and speeds up the run. The player from 2 who activates the levers usually destroys the gate as well. 2B and 2T may also be abbreviated as B and T, which is just a faster way to write it. If you call 3, that means you're asked to do every terminal in 3 except the first one. It really depends how fast section 1 and 2 are completing their terminals, but I suggest all but the first terminal. The reason for this is that you usually run out of time as you need to go past 4's gates and 4 itself, then glitch through the 3rd gate to access 3. The first player in section 3 from section 2 usually does the first terminal in 3. This can also be done by the player soloing section 1 by using a Spirit Leap to leap to the player doing 3. Now, finally 4. Since you can get past the 4th gate straight away, you'll have a lot more time to play with and can do all of 4's terminals, including the device. Speaking of the device on 4, if it stops working or bugs out, despawn your pet and try again. This usually fixes the problem. Do make sure to re-equip your pet going into phase 4 as Necron deals a lot of damage. Overall, the process of terminal grouping makes dungeon runs so much faster, but it has a problem that you should know about. If someone from another section completes the same terminal type that you were working on, you'll be kicked out of the GUI and have to restart from the start. It's fair enough why this happens because you're not really meant to be doing terminals from other sections until the gate is unlocked, but it's a handy tip to know. Once all the terminals, devices, and levers have been finished or activated, Necron will open the core entrance and you'll be taken down to the final phase, phase 4. In phase 4, you'll notice that there is a platform in the middle that is surrounded by a ring of lava. Necron will drop to 25% health and be vulnerable for the entirety of this phase. The aim is to kill Necron because the faster you can do that, the less likely it will be for you to die and fail the run. As soon as you touch the ground, start fighting Necron. Once he reaches 180 million health, he'll go to the middle platform and begin his nuclear frenzy. As time goes on, the frenzy's radius gets bigger, but will shrink if damage is dealt to Necron. Some parties might do it differently, but I suggest that the archer goes to mid as soon as they enter phase 4. Others can then teleport to mid using spirit leaps and deal lots more DPS than they would from a distance. Another option is to use Bonzo's staff to bounce into mid before or just after Necron reaches the platform. There are multiple methods to do this. Eventually, when enough damage is dealt, Necron's frenzy will stop and he will say "Ah." Following this, he will destroy one of the platforms on the outer ring. This takes 10 seconds and is usually more than enough time for a 5-player party to kill Necron. You'll know if you've killed Necron because he says, "all this, for nothing." If Necron wasn't killed, he'll target the players until he is down to 50 million health. Then, he will return back to the middle platform and repeat the process. If Necron isn't dead after the second time he goes to mid, he'll aggro the remaining players until he finally dies. Well, that's finally it. Good job, you did it. You'll then be rewarded with loot chests depending on how your run went. If you don't have at least 35 million coins in your purse or bank, don't play floor 7. You aren't ready because if you drop a Necron's handle, you won't have enough to afford it, and therefore lose around 800 million coins at profit. Overall, if you made it past phase 4, I genuinely congratulate you. The floor 7 boss fight can be super difficult to learn, but once you get the hang of it, you'll really enjoy grinding it. If you need any further help with completing the floor 7 boss fight, please let me know in the comments. I'll try to do my best with helping you out. That's all for today's video. If you did enjoy, consider leaving a like and subscribing. Don't forget to join my Discord. Thanks for watching. See ya!